I've been painting miniatures for 2 years now, and I've never painted the most iconic model in the hobby, the Space Marine, which is kind of funny because most people start off with this model. So how was I introduced to the hobby? Well, Dungeons and Dragons, and I've been primarily painting Artisan Guild, and I never really touched Warhammer for a variety of good reasons. But recently, a good friend of mine gifted me this Space Marine, so I guess there is no escaping. And so the question is very simple: is this going to be a mistake? Well, let's find out. And just like any other miniature, I primed the miniature in black so that I can make a picture of it beforehand to define the midtones, the shadows and the highlights, and we don't have to guess what to paint. And for this mini, I'm going to use 3 primary colors, which is dark blue, turquoise and green. This is not from a tutorial. This is not a copy from anybody else. These are just colors that I felt like using. So without further ado, let's get painting. Alrighty, McTidy, so we're first going to block in those base colors before we are going to the midtones and highlights. For this particular mini, I'm going to use a wet blending technique, which means we are going to blend those colors together while the paint is still wet. Because if we do a layering technique here, which is by the way also fine, we're going to stack up colors on top of each other and do a glaze between those colors to get the same result. But in my opinion, glazing is more time consuming than wet blending. So that's why I decided to go for that technique on this particular mini. So we've got one leg finished, which means we also have to do the other leg because we can just not paint that. No, we can't. Also, we did the same thing over there. We went from the dark blue into the mid-tone, into the highlight, and eventually we've ended up with something like this. I mean, this looks totally awesome. And before moving on to the rest of the mini, I could say like, hey, the rest of the model is just going to be the same as how I did the legs. But in this video, I obviously want to share every part of the mini because every part of the mini is different. The head is a sphere. Maybe the arms are cylinders. And as you know, when we're painting volumetric highlights, we have to know how light reflects. So for example, here we are going to paint the thigh is somewhat of a cylinder, so much of the light will reflect on top of the cylinder. Same for the arms. When we're looking at the arms, it will probably be, according to where the light source is coming from, be reflecting from the upper side of the cylinder. Same for the chest. I could say the same thing once again. The chest is somewhat of a cylinder in combination with a sphere, so that allows the light to reflect from mostly the top part of the armor. Eventually, it's just doing much of the same thing over and over again, adding the shadow, adding the mid-tone, adding the highlight, and blending these colors together to eventually end up once again with something like this. And I, by the way, want to mention that if you love these videos that I'm making, if you really enjoy the content that I'm putting out, then definitely don't forget to hit the subscriber button, because you're really helping me out, but you're also helping the channel grow. For me, this is the best thing that has happened to me in recent years. I really love this project, and I'm just going to continue putting out awesome content for you guys to enjoy. So let's get back to the video. All right, so now we're moving on to the jetpack. I think you know very well what type of shape this is. This is obviously a cylinder, and we've been using the same colors like we did before. I mean, we're not going to change that all of a sudden. And here as well, I did this wet blending technique, and I do want to say that sometimes paint does dry up along the way, which makes it more difficult to do a wet blend, and that obviously means you have to adjust as a painter, and yes, I have to do some glazing in between. When wet blending, it doesn't always mean things go the way you want, but eventually it did end up with something like this, which is what we wanted to go for. All right, next we're talking about the face. This is once again also a very obvious shape. We're talking about the sphere. And when we're talking about a sphere, we're talking about a very clear light source on one singular point. Most of the time this is on top, and that's also what we're doing for this face. We're making the utmost highlight on top of its head, and we're doing once again this nice wet blend in between those colors. Some of those colors dried up faster than I could paint, so I did some glazes in between, and eventually we also ended up with a very nice face. And as you can see, this model is really starting to look awesome. And the thing that I'm most flabbergasted about is that it really gives this green look. And you maybe you think like, yeah, duh, I mean, you're using green. I understand. But in this case, I've been trying to paint from blue into green. And the thing I think is so funny, because I'm still learning and experimenting as well, is that these colors are next to each other on the color wheel. That's why they naturally blend very well. I think it's very cool to see that doing this experiment from blue to green still makes the mini look green overall. I mean, that those shadows are blue, it only makes it more awesome. Okay, so now with most of the mini being done, there's something important that I do want to say. It is very good to paint something looking at somebody else as a reference so you can practice. I mean, I'm doing that with non-metallic metal, but the thing that is even more important is that you understand how certain material is behaving. I mean, yes, you could paint something by looking at somebody else on how they paint non-metallic metal, and I do think that is the way to go for getting some momentum. But eventually, what I think is very important is that you eventually get familiar with certain materials like metals or like wood or skull and how they're behaving. And that is something that I really wanted to say before moving on. Okay, let's go. Moving on to the next part of the mini, which is the jetpack, the weapon, the chest, and the trim on the shoulders. And for that, I went for the color red because red is naturally the opposite color of green, which is a complementary color. I started off with doing the jetpack first, then I moved on to the weapon itself. Also used the color red there, the chest and the trim on the shoulders. For this particular part of the mini, I didn't do any wet blending. I just did highlights on itself, and later on I glazed these layers together so that we also get a nice blend slash transition. It's actually very simple. It's not that hard, you know? You just gotta keep trying and then you get something nice. You know, they say if you spend 10,000 hours on something, you eventually will get good. So, the belt. For the belt, I decided to go for a somewhat gray slash blue color so that we would not lose the readability of the miniature itself. The reason I went for this color is because gray is obviously the opposite of a saturated color. For this, we are dealing with somewhat of a square for where the gun is supposed to go in, and I obviously added the highlights and midtones accordingly, and I even did some nice brush strokes to give it this little bit of weathered look, and I think that turned out great. I'm loving it. Okay, I'm a little bit out of breath right now. My cat decided to take a shit because we have, I don't even know how to say this. It's called kattenbak in Dutch. It's where the cat takes a shit, and I had to get it out as quickly as possible. But yeah, I'm here on the attic. I have to get it down. I was doing this running, you know what I'm saying? I mean, look at him. Look at this guilty man taking a poo while I'm recording. Don't do that. Why are you doing that? He's a good boy. You're a good man. Don't take a poo here. Don't take a poo. Poopity doo doo. All right, so we are now in the final stages of the miniature. The only thing left to do is his eyes. For this, I went for a orange/yellow color to stay a little bit true to the red color, because we are having a split complementary color scheme on this mini. We're having dark blue, we're having green, and we're having red. So if we want to stay true to those red colors, I wanted to give the eyes an orange color. So then we were only left with edge highlighting. I think this is awful. I don't like doing it, but that's because I always tend to have too much paint in my brush, which leaves me with very thick edge highlights. I'm trying to thin down the paint. I'm trying to get out as much water out of the brush with a piece of paper. Eventually, it did turn out very well. What I've also been doing but did not record is defining some edges with a dark stroke. But I will show this in a different video because I didn't record it. I'm sorry. It is important though, because it really helps the readability of the mini. So with all of this being done, we are left with this. I mean, this looks very, very good in my opinion. And I also created a base off camera. I've been focusing on recording the miniature itself, and I have not been recording the base. If you want to see me paint the base as well, then leave in the comments if that is something you want to see. I might even make a base video specifically about the base itself. But I think the mini is done, and I think it's now time to show you the end result. And that's it. I think this mini turned out amazing. I think it looks stunning. And honestly, you want the question to be answered. Was it a mistake? Hell no, it was definitely not a mistake. I really enjoyed every bit of this miniature. And the reason being is that I really love the simplicity of this miniature. I mean, it's not really complex compared to other minis that I've been painting. I really loved the simplicity of the mini, and it allowed me to practice on blending. And I think that's awesome. And I do understand that this is an entry model for miniature painting. So if you like this content, once again, I'm asking you to hit that subscriber button because it's helping me out a ton and it motivates me to create even better content for you to get a smile on your face. And if you're not really into Warhammer and you're more into Dungeons and Dragons, then don't worry because I got you covered. And I've been painting a owlbear recently where I've also been using a variety of different blending techniques. So definitely make sure to check that video out. Thank you boys and girls for watching this video and I would like to see you in the next one.